Good afternoon, everyone. I live and work on Guam. I'm the program manager for the Guam Coral Reef Initiative, which is probably not so relevant for what I'm about to talk about, but I'm also the chair of the CRC's Management Working Group, which is relevant. So in early 2020, the CRC leadership team convened and came up with a list of organizational priorities for 2020 to 2025. And one of those priorities is to develop and promote the use of standardized terms and metrics for coral reef restoration. And the reason why this was identified as a priority is because it's a gap in our field and it slows the sharing of new ideas and methodologies, and it impacts our ability to really compare across different projects and across regions. So we thought that being able to create some kind of common language through this glossary project could help us enhance the efficiency and the shareability of restoration efforts. I would like to point out that the group that I am working with is not focused on metrics, so that has primarily been tackled by the monitoring working group under the CRC, and they do have a restoration monitoring guide that came out as a NOAA technical memo in 2020 that describes a lot of those metrics. So I am part of a subgroup that is under the management working group, and this is co-led by myself and Megan Frazier with considerable guidance from Tally Barty. And we are kind of leading the charge to develop this glossary. We have 3 deliverables, and the goal is to complete these by the end of 2020. We intend to publish the glossary either as a manuscript or white paper. We go back and forth on this. And also develop some supporting products, including an executive summary and a one-pager, and then hopefully a wiki or some other kind of online platform. These are the members of the subgroup. I'm not sure if I don't see any of them in this room, but I would like to say thank you to all of them. So you can see that we have a relatively wide-ranging group of people, mostly in the United States, but some in other regions, including the Caribbean and Mexico and Guam. And if anyone would like to be involved in this subgroup, I would be very, very happy to welcome you onto our team. And we would love to have more representation in this group from people who are outside of the United States and North America. So please let me know. This is the process that we have been undertaking to establish this glossary. So the first thing that we did within the subgroup is we came up with a very, very long list of terms that we thought might be either used differently in different regions, not well defined generally, complicated or confusing, or generally ones that are very important and potentially brand new and novel, so terms that people across the field might not have a good understanding of yet. Then this list of terms was reviewed by the CRC leadership team and the review board, which I'll talk about in a moment. We took that terms list back, we added some terms, we took some out, and then we divided into subgroups to create draft definitions for the different categories of terms. This is kind of where we are now. I will admit I am the roadblock in this stage of the process. We are finalizing these draft definitions, and then those will be sent to the CRC leadership team and the review board again for feedback. We also have some additional external partners who have given both solicited and unsolicited feedback on these definitions, all of which we're grateful for. And we will, after those draft definitions are reviewed by the LT and the review board, we're going to revise it again. The LT will do a final review. We'll prepare either our manuscript or white paper. And then ideally, we are going to establish some kind of wiki or other online open source platform where we can share the glossary and people can add terms and add content and make comments on definitions, because there are a lot of words that are used differently in different parts of the world and across different sectors. However, we do not have any funding or manpower for that, so we are hoping to get some resources to undertake that effort, ideally within the next year or so. This is the review board. So we have representatives. In many cases, it's the chair or the co-chair of the CRC working groups. And then we've also tried to get people from a good swath around the world. So all the way from Australia to Micronesia to East Africa, the Red Sea, and the Gulf. For all of these regions, I do think that we would be happy to accept more review board members if anyone is interested or thinks that they have something of particular value to add. The main goal of this group is to provide kind of an external review that will be in addition to any kind of peer review that goes on before there is a manuscript, and really to get input across sectors, so government, NGOs, private sector, and then also around the world. Right now, we have 61 terms in our glossary, and they are divided into 3 main sections, which are in subsections. So we have general terms, and then we have restoration techniques, under which we have types of coral specimens, asexual restoration, sexual restoration, and then a section on nurseries and outplantings. And then we also have novel interventions, and under that we have acclimatization and adaptation and non-coral interventions. So the glossary also includes synonyms for all of the words that are contained within it, when there are synonyms, descriptions of the source and or sources that we used, and any kind of additional context that may be needed, such as if a term is controversial, for example, or may have changed, its usage may have changed over time, or it may be preferred or used differently in one region or another. I will say that in many cases, we have used almost the exact definition from a particular source, because if something is already where this group of experts thinks it should be, why reinvent the wheel? And in some cases, we have established new or combined definitions based on multiple sources. So I'm just gonna do a couple of examples, and I'd like to emphasize that these are draft definitions, so please don't come at me, we're still working on them. So one term that we have in our glossary is active restoration, and the synonyms are reactive restoration and reactive actions. And the definition that we've come to is that actions that directly assist in the recovery of reef functions and or populations, should they not be able to recover naturally. For example, these processes can be coral gardening, substrate stabilization, and algal removal. For this term, active and reactive can be used interchangeably. And this comes from 3 different sources, so this is an adapted definition. And essentially, when the subgroup was working on this, we have a massive folder of different resources, and we went through all of them, pulled out different definitions, and then kind of compared them, put them all in a spreadsheet, and reviewed them as a group. So there have been many, many meetings and extensive discussion, and we know that reaching a true consensus is probably impossible, and we can't please everyone, but we are trying to be as comprehensive and inclusive as possible. Another term that we have in here is restoration goal, and this is defined as a formal statement that describes the desired long-term impacts of restoration efforts. And in here, you can kind of see an example of additional context. So we did have restoration objectives defined as a separate term, and we ended up taking it out and kind of defined it in here in the additional context. But in this section, we're also referencing another document, and that will be throughout the glossary. And that's one reason why we're considering a white paper as opposed to a manuscript. The ability to include links and have more flexibility in the kind of formatting that we use, so we can reference other documents, because again, why recreate something if it's already been done really well? And this, again, was adapted based on several sources. We have had some challenges in this project. We've been working on it since early 2020. Everyone knows there's been some particular roadblocks in the last couple of years. But we are making progress as steadily as we can, and we're hoping to have things kind of completed or wrapping up by the end of next year. I would say that the biggest challenge in this process has been having an inclusive glossary that is comprehensive but also feasible and reasonable. So which terms do we really need to include? And this has been something that we've gone back and forth on many times. At some point we stripped it down to about 10 words and said these are the most important, but it's almost even harder to reach consensus on such a short list because obviously different stakeholders have different priorities. So we do want to have as many terms and definitions as we can, but we are planning to have additional definitions in this online open source product whenever we establish it. We really want our definitions to be useful across regions and sectors, and that's why we've included this additional context. We are also coordinating with multiple different organizations that are working on defining terms. So that ranges from RRAP in Australia to other CRC working groups. So we want to make sure that we're consistent as possible and also acknowledge differences where they exist. And then again, we could really use some funding for this wiki and some staff to run it. So thank you very much. And again, if you have any interest in being involved in this project, please reach out. I'd be very happy to talk to anyone more about it and would be thrilled to have more people engaged either in the subgroup or in the management working group or on the review board. Thank you.